Greetings to our viewers, subscribers, and friends in the industry. This is your host, Architect Edric Marcos C. Florentino, for All About Shelters. And in this video, I will be presenting only one section under Article 3 entitled Examination, Registration, and Licensure. Let's dive into this section 23. Suspension and revocation of certificate of registration, professional identification card of the special temporary permit. The board shall have the power upon notice and hearing to suspend or revoke the validity of a certificate of registration, professional identification card, or shall cancel a special permit granted under this Act to an architect or any grounds mentioned under Section 22. Here, for the use of the perpetration of any fraud or deceit in obtaining a certificate of registration and professional identification card or special permit or dishonorable conduct for any cause specified herein under. Provided, however, that such action of the board shall be subject to appeal to the commission, whose decision shall be final if he or she A. Has signed and affixed or permitted to be signed and or affixed his name or seal on architecture plans and design specification, drawings, technical reports, evaluation, estimates, or other similar documents, or would not prepare by him, her, or not executed under his, her immediate supervision, or B has paid money except the regular fees provided for to secure a certificate of registration. Or C. Has falsely impersonated a practitioner or former practitioner of alike or different name or has practiced under an assumed fictitious or corporate name other than that of the registered, or D. Has aided or abetted in the practice of architecture any person not duly authorized to practice architecture in the Philippines. Or he has openly solicited projects by actually undertaking architectural services without a valid service agreement, guaranteeing compensation of service to be rendered and or has actually allowed himself, herself to be exploited by undertaking architectural services without a valid service agreement, both acts being prejudicial to other architects registered and licensed under this act and inimical to the interest of the profession, or F. Has violated any provision of this act, its implementing rules and regulations, the code of ethical conduct, and standard of professional practice. The board shall periodically examine the grounds for the revocation of the certificate of registration and professional identification card, or update this as necessary under the implementing rules and regulations. Any person, firm, or associations may prepare charges in accordance with these provisions of this section against any registrant, or the board may motu proprio investigate and or take cognizance to act and practices constituting sufficient cause for suspension or revocation of the certificate of registration by proper resolution or order. Such charges shall be in writing and shall be sworn to by the person making them and shall be filed with the secretary of the board. Okay. Well, I believe you would agree with me, right? That this section is quite delicate in nature and a very sensitive one, if I may add that. I think Section 23 must be given more time for us to digest what is written in the main subject, plus the 6 points mentioned from A to F, because we are talking about suspending and revoking the certificate of registration and professional identification card of a licensed and registered architect, or canceling a special or temporary permit who has temporarily, granted to him or her to practice architecture in the Philippines. And I tell you, my dear friends, this particular section is a no joker issue for architects, and it should not be taken lightly by any architect, because the matter of suspending, revoking, or canceling the practice of an architect is a very fragile matter, and at the same time hurting and surely devastating to the concern once this happens to a licensed and registered architect. We read a while ago that this section gave us 6 important points to be aware of, such so to the practicing licensed and registered architect. So to my colleagues, let us all give importance to what is written in section 23. And I encourage you to take note inside section 23. And let me say this. It is clear that the Board of Architecture has the power to suspend or revoke the certificate of registration and the professional identification card. And not only that, they too has the power to cancel a special or temporary permit, especially to those who have violated the provision provided in this act. And of course, let us not all forget that this is just one of the many mandates given to the Board of Architecture. Now, having said that, they have the power to monitor, or for more aggressive word, allow me to use the word, to police the practice of architecture in the land. Also in section 23, it is clear that in any eventualities, it needs to undergo a process of hearing the case. This is just to be fair to those who are involved. But before any verdicts, from the Board of Architecture, they will definitely give their fair and just evaluation on those cases, and was brought to them or from their own initiative. And at the end of their evaluation, a decision of the matter shall be rendered, and may issue an order suspension, revocation, or cancellation of a certificate of registration, the professional identification card, or the special and temporary permit that they granted previously to an architect. But of course, this act has provided a possible venue for review or to reverse the decision made by the Board of Architecture. It is clear as well in this act that the decision made by the Board of Architecture may be appealed to the Commission to further examine the decision made by the Board of Architecture. In short, an appeal is possible through the Commission. But whatever the decision or verdict made by the Commission, please take note that the Commission's decision is final and executory. All right, so let us now proceed and dig to the 6 violations that were discussed in Section 23 of Article 3. Okay? Now, in letter A, it says, if the architect affix his or her signature and or imprint his or her seal on the architectural document, such as the plans, specification, drawings, technical report, evaluations, estimates, or other similar documents or work that he or she did not prepare or did not produce under his or her supervision, he or she has violated this act. This simply means that the architect producing those works should be knowledgeable on the progress of the work being done in that particular project, or maybe to some extent he or she must be at least be on watch when the work is being done or in progress. In short, all work of the architects must be under his or her supervision while conducting that work. As simple as that, right? Now, letter B, that he or she has paid a sum of money, or I would say under the table approach, in securing a certificate of registration. This is clearly a grave violation and a serious crime. It is pretty obvious that he or she obtained the certificate of registration illegally and obviously violated this act. I won't be dealing much on this item because we all know very well that this is improper and wrong. Now, in letter C, it tells us that a person who has falsely impersonated an architect or claimed to have a different name, whether living or dead, or representing a fictitious name or a corporate name other than the registered name, has clearly violated this act. And we know very well that in whatever profession we are in, all professionals must practice in truth, honesty, and transparency. This is an important essential act in all professional practitioners. In gist, it simply means that the professionals should not deceive other people or do dishonest act. Now going now to letter D. Here it says that no person or individual who are not duly authorized to practice architecture cannot practice architecture or aiding a non-architect practicing architecture. In this way, he or she has violated this act if they aided to do an illegal practice. In a nutshell, this is primarily focused on people who knows the craft but not licensed to practice, and probably tempted to ask an architect to aid a non-licensed architect to practice architecture. This is an illegal practice and has violated this law. Now, moving on to letter E. If an architect solicited project and has rendered his or her architectural services without a valid service agreement indicating its compensation of service, has violated this act. In short, this particular subsection tells us that a service agreement must come first before an architect renders his or her professional services. I think it is a straightforward thing that no further explanation is needed. Okay? And lastly, we'll go on letter F. It tells us that any architect, for, for that matter, who has violated any provisions of this act, it's implementing rules and regulations, the code of ethical conduct, and the standard of professional practice, has clearly violated this act. Therefore, as architect, we must put the law, the IRR, the ethics, and the standard of professional practice in heart so that we don't violate them. Okay? Now we move on to the second paragraph of this section. In this part, it explains that the Board of Architecture shall periodically revisit, review, examine, update the implementing rules and regulations on the revocation of the certificate of registration and the professional identification card. Okay? Now, well, in this last paragraph of section 23, it tells us that anyone, either an individual, firm, or a group, may file charges who has violated any of the provision of this act. But of course, these are to be submitted in writing, and it shall be sworn by the person who is filing a case to the secretary of the board, or to some occasion, the Board of Architecture may act to do motu proprio investigation or take action in their own initiative for the suspension or revocation of the certificate of registration through a board resolution or order to take effect. So to my dear colleagues, we hope and pray that we may not be in any of those situations. All right? Okay, so I guess that's about it on section 23. Well, I do hope I was able to cover well section 23 under article 3, right? Examination, registration, and licensure. Now, just a simple request, my dear friends. If you were able to get something from this video, please press that like button and the notification bell, right? For updates on my videos, and please subscribe as well to this channel to get more videos in regards to RA 9266 and other matters that surrounds architecture. Well, I am Architect Edric Marco C. Florentino, your host for All About Shelters, and thank you for joining me in this video. Mabuhay!